Like my global came from verloor. Horrified. The joy, the euphoria of the Proteas winning the World Test Championship. We're waiting my whole life. Cricket being my first love growing up. And you know how much I love rugby. But to Temba Bavuma, Aiden Markram, Shukri Conrad, the whole Protea squad, just an incredible, incredible morning. One of the most tense hour and a halves. I must have sunk about 5 castles at that stage, and it was early morning. And then fired up for the Bulls. 19-0 after 15 minutes. Anyone had switched off, I don't blame you. And 32-7. But what irritated me the most was Jake White's comments afterwards. You don't beat Leinster. I knew we couldn't beat them. They have Geordie Barrett, who's a New Zealand All Black, who's the most popular guy. That's what I need. Our budgets. 4 years ago, Jake White took a decent side to Dublin, and he beat pretty much the same team in the semi-final. That was 4 years ago. And when I look at their performance, 32-7 on the occasion, it reminded me of their first ever URC game at the Aviva, 31-3, where they just couldn't handle the pace of Leinster. They got blown away in the first 30 minutes, and they got blown away again here. And I know that you're a big Jake fan, as I have been throughout my career, Zels. But to hear those comments was just as disappointing as the Bulls' performance. Because I think of a team like Northampton Saints, who ended 8th in the Premiership out of 11 teams. They won 8 and they lost 10 matches. They didn't take the All Blacks or the British and Irish Lions to the Aviva Stadium. They took their Northampton side with an incredible attitude. They knew they had one go at it, and they were 15-0 up 10 minutes into the game, and they made Leinster play the catch-up. And the talk the whole week was, these guys can't get an early start. We've just got to get that early start, 15 minutes. And I expected the Bulls, the passion, the emotion to be there. There was nothing. It was a no-show.
It was a no-show, mate. It was a no-show, and it was a very disappointing result. For me, like, being the punter that I am, the tipster, I did pick Leinster to win this game. I know other people sitting at this desk didn't. But for me, it's not the result that was really disappointing. I didn't expect the Bulls to win, and the performance was underwhelming. I expected them to put up a fight, but definitely the post-match comments from Jake, for me, was massively disappointing. And the reason for that is, if he'd come out and said, we had a terrible day at the office, I didn't do the prep right, the coaching staff needs to look at themselves. He spoke like a guy who wasn't going to be in this job for much longer, because there's no long-term benefit from any of the things that he said. Commercially, managerially, upwards, and into the playing staff. If you're a guy who's in the Bull setup and you're not a test player, if you're under 25 years old, Jake has basically come out and said, you're not somebody that he really is focused on to try and develop to go and win a championship, because what he needs to do is he needs to bring in test caliber players if the Bulls are serious about winning championships. And he's proven the point that you don't need that to win, because like you say, he won a semi-final in Dublin. He's won against the odds multiple times in his career. He took a Brumbies team that nobody was talking about, turned them into contenders in Super Rugby. He won at Christchurch with the Sharks team that was down to 13 men. His whole career is not built on this. So it's passé. It's redundant to think that in 2025 you're going to buy a winning team. Like, that era is gone now, because everybody's got a checkbook. This idea that you're ever going to be able to stockpile talent and keep it long term, those days are gone. You have to be able to get quality out of your youngsters, and Jake's done that with Cam Honeycomb, because Cam Honeycomb's arguably the greatest development in Bulls rugby in the last couple of seasons. Nobody had ever heard of him 3-4 seasons ago. Ruan Norkir's another youngster who's come through massively there. And
I got to say, people did hear him. He came from Parboys High, which was outstanding.
But I'm saying the wider general...
Hard to miss that talent, okay? Where Jake was good has been in his recruitment, bringing back guys like Walker Lowe, the guys he's brought back from overseas. But there has to be a form of development within the squad. You take a look at the Stormer squad. You look at that Sharks B team that we called it. They went to Loftus and beat the Bulls.
Yeah.
The development within that union, and trust those players more, as we've said to John Plumtree, as opposed to your established Springboks. And you look at a side like the Lions, who just need 1 or 2 heavyweights, but they still managed to get league wins. When you think, oh, how did they do that? With just natural young talent.
Yeah.
But to say you just can't beat Leinster, it's they just mentally, I think, were shot them before the game. Or maybe the Sharks' victory took it out of them, did the damage. But to see that pack neutralized as it was, to see them out-thought, out-coached, and outplayed. All credit to Jacques Nienaber, what he's brought to that Leinster side, especially during the playoffs. But watching Bernard Jackman's 2.5-minute summary, and he's outstanding, the former Leinster and Irish hooker, great pundit. And it was the kicking game, the balance, the calm, the composure. They played the field percentages. That 19-0 came from 3 opportunities. Geordie Barrett, outstanding. We'll speak about him a little bit later. Test player, took the opportunism and basically scored. And you look again, the game was over. You could just see Jake's face. They weren't coming back. There was not going to be any heroic comeback in the second half. And I think any Bulls fan should be hell of a disappointed. The Bulls should look at themselves and say, are we happy to be the bridesmaids all the time? Go to a final, have a great season, but we know we're going to lose home or away? Or is it time for change? And I wrote a piece on the blog to say, after 5 years now, let's include the Rainbow Cup as well, when they went and took a beating against Benetton. Maybe it is time for change in terms of the leadership, because are we going to get the same old again next season? The Bulls win 70% of their games because they're too good to lose at home. With that squad, comes crunch time, they lose. What disappointed me was I felt they'd learned nothing from their previous finals defeats in Cape Town, at home, and this one. And I think that's the question that has to be asked is, don't see this final in isolation. What did you learn from it? Because the rhetoric all week was, let's take the lessons of those losing finals and turn it into a victory.
Precisely.
And I felt that Leinster took the lesson of their losing finals and turned it into victory. And that was the big difference. And you'd have to say that Jacques Nienaber and Leo Cullen got one over Jake quite comfortably, as did the players. And those Leinster players were up for that game, led by the likes of Geordie Barrett, led by Jack Conan, who was outstanding.
Yeah.
Althea coming on and obviously providing the magic. But that game was long won by then. And then a front five that were apparently going to take a beating because they'd taken one at a better tight five, had taken a beating, a better pack potentially with Doris there at Loftus a season ago. So when the Bulls beat Leinster, that was that Irish squad just a month before they came to South Africa. When they beat them at Loftus, Jake wasn't saying we don't have the team to compete. We can't. This is a great win. It's basically all set up for us. Franco Smith then got on a plane with Glasgow. Everyone's saying, how can you have a competition where you've got to fly from Scotland to South Africa on the Highveld at altitude to win? And they did.
Yep.
You know, Munster came to South Africa in front of 56,300 and they beat the Stormers. It can be done. Northampton went in the Vestic Champions Cup and beat Leinster. In one-off knockout games, it can be done. So I hear what people say about Leinster and their squad depth and their systems and the money that they have in terms of they're always going to finish top or top 2 in the league and get that home final. But you can go and beat them. It's been proven. That's why it's their first title in 4 years in 2 different competitions. That's 1 out of 8. So I was just all around so flat about Jake and the Bulls when I saw those comments.
Well, for me, it's very much about the comments and not the result, because you can hit bullseye throwing a dart over your shoulder. It doesn't mean the probability is high. Like going to Leinster, beating them in Dublin at this point of the history of that club, when there's so much pressure on them to win a final and bring home a trophy, I think is a very, very difficult thing to get right. But you could write that performance off. If Jake came out afterwards and just said, hey, we weren't prepared well enough, I didn't get the guys ready, we'll be back, we've done it before with this team, and the disappointing thing was Jake's response to that performance and that results. And I think that's where they need improvement. Also, rugby is very much about brawn and brains. And the Bulls for too long have been all about brawn. You spoke last week about Jake maybe coming back from Japan and having lost a little bit. For me, I think he actually needs to go back to what worked for him in Japan, because what he didn't have in Japan was big South African beef to win games. He had to be technically and tactically on point. And his whole messaging around that had to be based on rugby things. And I just feel like he's reverted to what worked in 2007, which is imploring South Africans to dig deep, find their belief in the traditions and history of rugby in this country. You come from Grade College, you come from this province, you defend this city, you know. And I think a lot of that stuff maybe doesn't land with the generation that's around in 2025. And I think he needs to focus more on what is the rugby stuff that they need to get right. And the way that manifested itself on Saturday was the Bulls came out, and in the first 10 minutes, you could tell that Leinster had prepared for one-pass rugby. The Bulls were going nowhere. They were getting smashed in every single carry. but they persisted with it for 80 minutes. They carried, and then when they hit a dead end, and they, as a bailout, they kicked, which is the very worst thing you can do to Leinster. So there's a lack of tactical intelligence about that Bulls team. We've spoken about it the whole season. It's been pretty obvious from the sidelines. That's the disappointing thing for me, is that instead of taking it on board as a coach and being like, hey, we missed the boat as a management team, it was all about these players aren't good enough, and for me to win, we need to get better players. That's the most disappointing thing.
Yeah, not to say this group is actually good enough.
Totally.
They'd won 6 out of 9 matches overseas.
Yeah.
They'd had the heroic win against Munster, where they dug deep at Thormond Park, history making. I just felt that when they played Edinburgh in the EPCR playoffs, and they'd given it up by starting with a lot of their replacement players, and when they brought the big guns on, it was a little bit too late, even though they fought back. It's like mentally they'd given that one. Mentally, they just looked like the granite from Loftus turned to putty again. And I think it started at the top.
So you remember that semi-final that Willie Leroux won on his own with his kicking game? Was that the semi-final? Then Glasgow won the final. I think it was that. When they beat, okay. So Willie tried to do that again this week. It was like a one-man turnaround effort. And that for me is quite telling. It was all down to the players on the field to fix. And I know that's a reality of rugby. The players do have to take decision-making responsibility. But there's a lack of sort of team structural a base to be able to build off that. It was just like, hey, Willie, do something. Hopefully some magic comes out of this. Hey, Jan Goosen, do something. There was no like, okay, guys, we're switching from plan A. We're going to try this tactical set, plan B. Let's test their ability to field our kicks under pressure. Whatever the situation is. That was missing from them. It was like, we've come here ready to bash down the front door like we did the last time. They're stopping us from bashing the front door down. Hopefully Willie can work some magic, because we're all out of ideas.
But there was also, again, you talk about intensity, you talk about mongrel. You arrive with that tight five. You arrive with that pack. Just start there at least. If Leinster then have too much class in their backs, with their skill, you accept it at the end of the day. And I just felt that the intensity wasn't there to match the occasion for a final. And that speaks potentially to the preparation or the mental mindset of the leadership that filters down to the players. I've seen teams 19-0 down before. They have come back and won games. But you just take one look at Jake on the sideline, you knew that horse had bolted. You know, it reminded me of the Springbok game against the All Blacks. We win that game at Eden Park under Harry Viljoen. Jake was the assistant. We win the Tri-Nations back then. And it was Jonah Lomo was playing for them. Joost was playing his 75th test, then a record, Mark Andrews' 75th test. Byron Keller and Chris Jack with the All Blacks newbies in the side. You know, it was a passionate. Kobus Versaki called the guys in. He said, they hit, we hit. It's 15 on 15 here. No solos. We make a statement tonight. Andre Fenter, who rarely spoke, said, we're like a dog. We go and piss on that field. We own it. It's ours. They're under siege. We went out there magnificently. Then they cut the lights, gave us a 3-minute little montage of New Zealand, the haka. By the time they walked out, the lights came on over about 30 to 40 seconds. 5 minutes had gone. We played the anthems. They got the ball, stuck it into the corner. We threw the ball in the lineup. First line out, Keller hit Joost, and Chris Jack hit Mark Andrews. The referee said, you got that out of your system. Let's play on. Harry Viljoen turned around and said to me, we're going to get fucked up. 2 minutes into the test, and we were. And he dropped that F-bomb on me like that because he just knew. He just put his head down. We lost 26-15. Brown kicked 5 penalties, and that was the end. But we had felt that they were the team under pressure.
Yeah.
But they had prepared for that. They knew what we were going to come with.
Yeah.
And we actually, and I think there may even be a little bit of, in a weird way, the Bulls putting too much emphasis on Leinster's playoff woes for the last 4 years. Because they didn't come out hungry like the lion, the herd on the charge.
Yeah.
I was hell of a disappointed in that.
Listen, a lot of that comes from what happened at scrum time.
I'm very angry,
Zels. I took Wilco Low to demolish Leinster single-handedly. I said if he stays on the field, they win the game. And again, this comes back to coaching. Whoever did the scrum prep for Leinster got it 100% right. Because not only did they stop the Bulls, they rolled the Bulls in those first 2 scrums, then used some clever tactics to milk some penalties out of the Bulls. Wilco was nowhere. And so that isn't because Wilco is now a worse player. It's because Leinster's scrum plan worked like a bomb. That comes down to coaching. And like I've said now, the Bulls are a team that are all about momentum. They don't have a plan B. So if they get momentum, you can't stop them. If you stop the momentum, they can't win. And without that scrum, they had no momentum. And that's exactly the point I'm making, is that you cannot be that one-dimensional team 4 or 5 years into your reign. Yeah, that's maybe how you start to build a team, but you have to develop that into something more for exactly these kind of occasions.
I think you hit the nail on the head. Another cliche to start the day is 5 years. I'm talking 5 years now into this.
Spot on.
And the Rainbow Cup, perfect example. We went over. I don't know what they put in the gondolas, what they put in the wine, but we never pitched for that final. We had been the Bulls. And Benetton, with 6 reject South Africans, hammered us. And we spoke about, we don't know how to travel anymore. I mean, we're traveling to Australia and New Zealand for the best part of 25 years. So being out of it for a year with COVID really shouldn't have affected us that much, but apparently it did.
Yeah.
We've slowly built up this. And then we went and played Leinster, opening game of the Vodacom URC. They had about 8 or 9 of the internationals out because they just come back from the international season, and boom, they pounded us 31-3. So I take that Rainbow Cup final and I take that game and I compare it to this game. Where is the improvement? Where's the advancements? So if it's the height of insanity, you go out and you do the same thing every time, you expect a different result. I think that's at the heart of my frustration, having watched that game for 80 painful minutes, was you guys are doing nothing different. How do you expect a different result? And you go back to that Northampton game, they did something very different. They tried it in the final again and just couldn't replicate it against Bordeaux. But Leinster didn't know what had hit them in that first 25 minutes.
Big time.
And it's like, it doesn't matter who the team is, who the player is. If he gets hit back quickly, early, you know, the Leinster very much like the great All Black teams, rhythm. Whether they got rhythm, they're going to just kill you. And Northampton ensured that they didn't have rhythm, but they were still good enough to come back and be in a position to win the game in the end. Here, they were just, it was basically they were playing with the wind and get given everything. Like you talk about some of those kicks that came back. You know, so their kicking game was good, but it wasn't exceptional because you had a Johnny Sexton been at 10, I think it could have been 50 or 60 points.
Yeah.
And then just the class in decision-making, and that's where Geordie Barrett comes in for me. He's been a revelation for Leinster. He came there as this All Black. Is he a 15? Is he a 12? Can he play on the wing? Is he a goal kicker? And he broke up the Irish midfield. And in the end, they had to pick him. He's the best 12 in the competition. And it's not good news for us when you think, even though they don't want to pick him in New Zealand because he played in a terrible competition, apparently. But yeah, I think it's more frustration of where were the learnings? You know, and I kind of went on social media, and I obviously always include Willem Strauss as the president when they do well, and I said, is it going to be Groundhog Day? Are you with perennial bridesmaids? Because if that's what your coaches just said after the game, and you and I both, we said at the start of the show, Jake's biggest fans.
Big fan of Jake.
But
Exactly.
it's like, has time actually passed him by now?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know enough about what's going on there to say for sure, but Jake is a winning coach. He knows how to win. And I don't know what some of the limitations are there, but I think he needs to take a very close look at what he's doing and what messaging he's kind of using as the base for that team. For me, a guy like Andries Becker, I would definitely try and look at promoting him within that setup. I think he's been around as a Springbok player. He's got the respect of the players. He's of a younger generation. He was close enough to success with the Boks. He was integral in the whole Jacques Nienaber era at the Stormers. And I think having a bit of a younger voice there and maybe a different kind of messaging could totally turn that team around. I have a real look at my defense. The set piece is solid with Wilco Low around. And with Andries running the attack and the line-out, I think you could get some great results. I just think they need to have a look at a bit of a shake-up there, because you can't go into this thing talking about the history and the tradition in 2025 with 25-year-olds, and you definitely cannot be going into the media space and saying, we've got to sign test-caliber players and have test-caliber players in our starting lineup, or we can't win championships. I think that's a very short-sighted thing to say. I'm surprised Jake said it. And again, if he'd come out and taken on board responsibility for this result and put it down to a terrible day at the office that they'll turn around, it'll be a very different thing. But it's almost like, oh, well, we just don't have the players to win these kind of things against teams like Leinster. And I don't think that's good enough.
Yeah, also, I take Franco Smith when they took 52-0 in the Investec Champions Cup. playoff against Leinster. Then they went back in the final league playoff round and it was 10-5 on the 79th minute. They lost 13-5, pretty much against the same teams. Then they went back in the URC playoffs, buoyant, and they got the same treatment that the Bulls got because Leinster were on top of the game and they didn't quite pitch because they felt we've had 2 dry runs at this third one. People are talking us up. And then Franco just went, not good enough on the day. We've got to look at ourselves a lot more. Yes, their systems are ahead of everyone else. It's like the Crusaders in New Zealand for so long. Their systems are ahead. They've got a club culture that other clubs may not necessarily have. But they can lose. Because in Leinster's case, they had been 4 failed Investec Champions Cup campaigns in terms of not winning the title. And their first URC title, forget that people are saying it's their 9th one. That was pro rugby. It's not URC. This is their first URC title. And kudos to them for coming out, answering the call, and actually getting the win. They were so dominant. It's good for Irish rugby. It's good for the British Irish Lions tour. But hell, it was a frustrating and very disappointing way for the Boks in terms of the Boks within that Bulls setup, and for the Bulls and for South Africa to end a URC campaign that offered so much.
Yeah, and I mean, you spoke a little bit before the show about Johan van Graan winning the Premier League final against Leicester, and his response after Bath missed out last season, and just the reaction to that, I think is a great example of how to do it.
Well, I was looking at some of the clips on social media, and they were showing from last year's defeat when they came so close. And Finn Russell, who was the guy, he's their magician, their playmaker, and Van Graan, and you can hear the audio, and Finn Russell's head's down, they've lost, and Van Graan puts his arm around him. He said, we just got to do it again next year, man. We've got to go next year. We'll get it next year. And at the end of this one, Van Graan has that moment on his own where he's very emotional. He just walks away, the relief that they did do it.
Yeah.
In dramatic fashion, 23-21, outscored 3-2. And then going to Russell, putting his arm around him, smiling as if we trusted our instincts, we trusted our squad. Johan van Graan didn't come out last year and say we need 10 internationals from overseas to win this thing. And they got it. It's not the treble, but it's a treble. They won the domestic cup.
Yeah.
They won the premiership. First time since 96 that Bath have won it. And they won the EPCR Challenge Cup, and they won it within 22 days of each other. And to lift themselves, the top of the table, 14 out of 18, and 2 of those league wins they played a development side because they knew they had the points. So you look at a guy like Johan van Graan, a young South African coach who went to Munster, followed Rassie and Jacques, did particularly well there, got them into playoff positions, and then has gone to Bath and basically built his own identity with that squad. And I think that's what, when I spoke to his mentor, Heineke Meyer, he said the key about Johan is become a better recruiter, a better man manager. And that comes with age and experience. You go back to Jake, who's been there and done it all.
Yeah.
The 21 World Championships, World Cup wins, Tri-Nations wins, Currie Cup wins, won the EPCR Challenge Cup with Montpellier. I just expected more gravitas from him in this final.
Totally. I think that's a fair comment.
And it's nothing personal at all.
Yeah.
I've always backed Jake as a coach, always acknowledged what he's done.
100%.
Just, I felt like, where's the aura of this guy?
Yeah.
Even if you just said, wow, smashed in the first 15.
Yeah.
And we did everything right. Kudos to Leinster for that 50 minutes. Not necessarily, you don't compete with these guys because of their budgets.
Spot on. He needed to be the voice of reason there. Me whining about it was not the right one.
No, so very, very disappointing end. Fortunately, we don't have to speak about the URC for a few months. We're going to be talking of Boks rugby, international rugby. Before that, we've got to get to our Stecco plays of the week. Given that I watch everything.
Was it from that final? The ones that you like, are they from the URC final?
There's one from the URC final. There's one from Super Rugby semi-final. And there's one from another Super Rugby semi-final. And I admit, I haven't picked one from the Premiership final. I thought they were kind of like boring tries. And although Finn Russell's intercept was great and his offload, and I look at the top 14 highlights packages, they're all great tries. But in the context of playoffs and the moments, when I look at Geordie Barrett, just what he did, his anticipation to read the play, to back his natural instinct and then to back his pace.
That fly hack.
And then that pace of his is very underrated in his play.
Well, he is 6'12", mate. Every stride is about 6 of mine.
But the joy he played with.
Yeah, he's fantastic.
And you talk about an off-season buy, an established All Black that goes north. He played like he's born in Dublin.
Yeah.
He played for that jersey. And, Rico Ioane's got big boots to fill there when he goes. Two very different type of players. And just the way he loved winning, what it meant to him to win a title. And he also said, you chase something that you think is bigger, you take the eye off the prize you should be getting in the bulletin, and let's go and fix it. So I thought that was a special play.
Okay.
Your guy, Will Jordan, special play in the context of that semi-final. Yeah. That step and that score in a very, very crucial time, because the Blues had bought their game. The Crusaders had to do something special to win it. They defended 38 phases on 3 penalty advantages in the last 5 minutes, and then defended another 3 phases before they turned over the ball, the Blues did. And so, great win for the Crusaders, and the way they won it. Also very much test like match rugby.
Yeah.
But when you look at what STECO stands for, sustainability, shaping the future, it shaped the future very much of the Chiefs campaign. It could shape the future of Damian McKenzie's test aspirations this year. The tackle on Tom Wright. Now, Tom Wright, just the gather and the backing himself was brilliant itself. It was a 5-pointer for all money.
Definitely.
Just the way McKenzie got in under him.
Tracked across.
Turned him, because I thought you made the tackle, but your shoulder's gone now. And just the rhythm and the momentum. It was just one of the great try-saving tackles that I've seen.
Absolutely.
Damian McKenzie, D-Mac for the Chiefs, who play the Crusaders in the final this Saturday. He is my STECO player of the week, but it's also my STECO player of the week. It just speaks to everything that's great.
Try-saving moment. I thought it was fabulous. Clutch moments. Came through in a big way. People love D-Mac for his creative ability to create tries out of nothing, and his handling skills and his stepping skills. But that was a huge moment on defense to come across against probably the Brumbies' best player, in terms of who they've got, mate. As you know, I'm a huge Tom Wright fan. So I thought it was a massive moment in that game. Any chance the Brumbies had of coming back into that thing disappeared when D-Mac made that tackle. So I think he's a worthy winner. We'll send the generator across to the white cannon.
We send the generator, D-Mac. He'll need it in crisis. Any other plays of the week that you thought?
No, mate, I thought you nailed the top 3 there. Beautiful.
Great. I also thought we've got to give credit to Tommy the Tank. He went over for his 21st try in the last 2 seasons for Bath, 22 in total, when you consider the one he scored for the Boks against Scotland. But 21 tries for a prop in 2 seasons, and that's in all competitions for Bath. He was a standout player. A goodbye from Leicester for Andre Pollard.
I was about to say, mate, we spoke up the Iceman last week. He didn't have ice in his veins this week.
I thought he was okay without being. I don't think the game got to that position where he was in a.
He could take over.
He could take over. Yeah. 23-21. If the opportunity had come in the end, I'm sure he would have nailed something. But I thought Bath were the better team. Deservedly so. They've been the better team just by a margin in what they've achieved throughout the season. I thought they were worthy winners, but a great final in terms of theatre and drama. We can talk about the yellow cards forever. I don't think it should have been. People say it should have been. Cole's been sent off. What could he do in the air? We saw that in Super Rugby. Hoskins Tutu sent off. What could he do? The guy changes direction and basically runs his head into Hoskins' head, and he gets sent. So we speak about that all the time. It goes nowhere.
Yep.
So that was a great moment. And then, I just thought I'd looked for anything South African to give it to them for our STECO plays, and there just wasn't any this weekend.
Well, you have to go Tommy du Toit, I suppose, mate.
Yeah, and it was one of those end of a movement. You knew he was going to score. With the greatest respect to Tommy there, I think you and I could have got it with a bit of help from our backs. But great result for Jan van Graan. Thanks for you've asked me to do a feature on him for SARugbymag magazine.
Right, man. I'm looking forward to that.
I'm looking forward to writing it as well. And just great success. Great success for Jock Nienaber.
Yeah.
France Lidika got to the final in Japan. Great success there. We know what Rassie's done with the Springboks. Jake got to a final. Hell of a disappointing the way they lost it. A lot of good things going on in South African rugby, just generally. I hope under 20s function as well. They're a bit disappointing in the rugby championship. kind of went down to an Australian side they should never have, and then nearly dramatically beat New Zealand. So hopefully Kevin Foote gets that together, and there's a little bit more of a dynamic result at the World Under-20 Championships. We're going to go on to some international rugby. I've been waiting 6 months for this. The Boks are back.
What? Really?
The Boks are back, and they're back against the Barbars next week in Cape Town. The Barbars, our mates, part of the family, the Macron family. And hopefully we'll be able to give away some tickets to that match courtesy of Macron. And also, I'm trying to get a Barbarians jersey as a competition ticket.
Nice.
Giveaway. I haven't heard back from the lads yet. I think they're still celebrating in London with the Proteas, who do arrive back in South Africa today, Wednesday. But I think the Macron guys may still be there, kind of recovering with the Breweries guys. But Macron, what a time to put your brand on a Proteas cricketing outfit.
Timing is everything.
Everything. First time they win the World Test Championships, and Macron as the winner is there, like they are for being on this show with us.
Exactly.
So hopefully we'll get you some good stuff
Yep.
in the build-up to the Barbars next weekend. So lucky it's going to be in Cape Town. The word is from Robbie Deans that Damien Dialande and Malcolm Boks will play for the Barbars against the Boks. I would love that, given they've been in Japan. Obviously, Damien plays for Robbie's team. But somehow you just never know. There's been no news from the Boks to say they will release them or they won't. But I would love it if there were a few Boks from this current squad in that match, because it would really up the intensity.
Mate, it would definitely up the intensity, maybe red line the intensity. I mean, those Bok trials, mate, are, if you go back in history, I think very high attritional. And I think, especially in the context of this Boks squad, we've got an old group that's won 2 World Cups and then some young guys coming through who want to make a name for themselves. Can you imagine Dukes versus Ethan Hooker in a game against the Barbarians with the Boks? There'll be blood on the dance floor, mate. So as much as it'll be a great spectacle, the Bok fan in me is hoping that maybe those guys don't play, because they're pretty crucial to the Boks' chances this season.
Yeah, I disagree there, because I would like to see a contest. And with the Barbars, you're always going to get flair and flamboyance, but you also, there's a lot of aging players that are coming over. Wonderful, great players. Sam Cane, Peter O'Mahony, Conor Murray, 4 Centurions, but 2 retired, 1 just playing club rugby in Japan now. So it's a game that you also want some of that young blood, you want some current internationals. And it's when there's a Barbarians or a World 15 game, the big problem there is availability.
Yeah.
Do clubs release their players because of the medical insurances? Are test teams are willing to let their fringe players go because they're preparing for their own international seasons?
Especially with the British and Irish Lions series on the go at the same time.
Exactly. So there you think you want to try and get a lot of those New Zealanders who are eligible to play
Yes.
for the All Blacks. Like ideally you would have wanted a Richie Mohanga here, but he's broken his hand in the final. He's not going to be there. I think Shannon Frizzell is coming. So that would be a good one as well. So yeah, I just hope that it is true that they are.
Wow.
By the time you
What
watch
a
this,
game, mate.
Rassie may have come and said they're
What
not
a
playing,
game.
they're not available. But I don't think it could do Rassie any harm to release 1 or 2 of his fringe players to play in that game. I think it'll be great.
Mate, yeah, like I say, I think it'll be a fantastic game to watch, mate. I definitely want to record and enjoy multiple times over.
Or Robbie Deans can give Jake a call and they can put some bulls in there for redemption.
There we go. That's not a bad call. Hey?
Let your final game of the
Like
season be
Barbarians, Harold Forster would be a great guy to throw there.
Darby Creel.
Yeah.
He'd be great.
No, 100%.
He'd be great in
But
there.
not, I don't know if I'd go with Springboks, mate. You.
I would like to see a few Springboks in there. Some frontliners. I would love to see that. But it's going to be a great occasion.
Talk to me about the squad. I want to know about the squad. Tell me about the Springboks
The
squad.
Springbok squad. Before we get to the Springbok squad, I want to put something to you,
Okay.
and I'm going to advocate for that. Reappoint Rassie Erasmus to 2035.
Mate, why not? I mean, it makes perfect sense
He's
to do it.
now appointed to 2027.
Yeah.
He's a pup in terms of age. He's our Alex Ferguson. The difference is he's building a legacy behind him of coaches that are coming through.
Yep.
If it's not broken, why try and fix it? Give him the comfort. Doesn't matter what happens in Australia in 27. He's there for another 8-year cycle.
Mm.
I think our rugby would benefit immensely, immeasurably, if Rassie was just told, take it for the next decade.
Yeah, I mean, look, for me, even if he isn't hands-on on the field every second of the day, to have Rassie in the mix as where the sort of to be sitting behind the desk where the buck stops, I think is crucial to South Africa sustaining this period of success. Maybe you bring back Jacques and you give him more of a leading role again. Maybe Van Graan comes in and adds a bit of value there, but Rassie's got to be the guy who he's got to be the shot caller, because it's proven he's won 2 World Cups in a row. The Boks are at their best ever, and there's a clear-cut plan of development. You can see the progress coming through. I don't think you want to change that in any way, shape, or form. And so if he's happy to stick around and he's motivated to keep winning, I don't know why you wouldn't want to re-sign him.
Completely. Now, if you look, we've got the momentum. Let's not lose the momentum. What I have loved about the way he's working his squad, if you look very closely, it's what he couldn't do from 19 to 23. He had to fast track a few things. But Jasper Visser's got 34 test matches. But in my mind, I'm thinking, who's going to replace Dwayne Vermeulen? Because it feels like Dwayne Vermeulen only just left. But he managed to get Jasper to 34 test matches,
100%.
Get him on the field in the most critical time in the 2023 World Cup final, backed him to go against the wheel of the scrum, keep the ball, get the put in, and we win the World Cup. So when I look at his plan for the year, and he's been very public about it, saying it's a balancing act of building to 27, but we also have to win. You stop winning, you lose momentum. You can't really start playing your experimental lineups. So the realist is there as much as the romantic. And I think his key would be to say, reverse engineer from 27's World Cup final back. How many tests does Sasha need?
Correct.
He needs another 20.
Spot on.
How many does Ethan Hooker need? Maybe another 5 or 6 to get into the mix. And. So he did that in the build-up to 23, that he was confident to say to Damian Willemse, you're the 15, Willie. You're not even in the 23 for a final. Help him during the week. Where that confidence wouldn't not necessarily have been there 2019 or even 2022.
Spot on.
So when I look at who he's brought into the squad, there's very much a 27 and a 31 plan. But they have to play. You know, if I think of a guy like Jan-Hendrik Wessels, just imagine where he will be in 2031.
Totally.
It'll be at the peak of his career.
Totally.
You know, so Sasha at the peak, if they say he's injury free.
Yeah.
So I've loved just having Rassie back talking to the media in the last 10 days, because he doesn't give you the inane comments. He doesn't. He's not just another coach who's out there batting it back, straight bat, telling you what you want to hear. He's got his opinions. He's flamboyant. He's a character. And he's good for the game. And I just felt with the rugby vibe, and we said Bulls was a bit of a flat week. The minute the Boks were training, it was like,
we're back.
The pressure's up, the intensity's up, and people are talking. It's the Springboks. And it's the Springboks against the Barbarians, 2 Italy and 1 Georgia. Now, ordinarily, 6 years ago, people would have said, who cares? Wait for the rugby championship. People just want to see this team play.
100%.
It doesn't matter who they play against.
But that's because I think we're in that pre-transition phase now where everybody knows about some of these youngsters coming through and they've seen them play in the URC and other comps, and they're excited about these guys, but they're also thinking where they're going to slot in, because the guys above them are some of the best to have played the game. And I think that creates intrigue. People want to know, how is Rassie going to... Everybody knows Rassie's in transition phase, but how is he going to do it? How is it going to play out? Who's not going to make it? Who is going to make it? It adds a layer of intrigue to every test match this season.
Look, and I think what he's done as well, he's done it so brilliantly because he's done it so publicly. He has said, if I can get Eben, Sia, Frans Malherbe to the next World Cup, they're going. If they're not going, but they're still the best player in 2026, they're playing. Even though I know they don't have another 6 months in their legs.
Yeah.
But I'm also a realist, he said. Maybe they won't make it. So who's the next cab off the rank?
Yeah.
And he's identified those players and he's put them in place. And I think that to me is the most encouraging thing. He's also always looking for a distinct advantage somewhere. Boan Venter, Marnus van der Merwe. Now, on the public's radar here, who's Marnus van der Merwe? A South African who went to Wales and was arguably the best performing hooker in the URC this season.
Yeah.
He's in the Boks squad. Boan Venter followed Pierre Schoeman, VPNL, and who's the other one?
Pierre Schoeman, VPNL, Duan van der Merwe.
Duan van der Merwe at the club.
Yeah.
I was thinking of props. It was all cable, but he was at Glasgow.
Yeah.
And he made the statement that he wants to play international rugby, meaning it doesn't matter where. And Scotland, he wants to follow in the in the footsteps of Piers Skuman, who obviously grew up always wanting to be a Scot and a British and Irish Lion.
Yeah.
And not a Springbok.
Yeah.
Rassie's been watching him and watching him. This kid has played 16. He started 16 out of 45 matches in the last 2 seasons for the URC. And they built him up. He's someone who comes off the bench. That's where his big skill is. Now you look at the injuries to the front rankers. You look at Kitsy's retirement. And all of a sudden, it's like, where's our next loosehead option coming from? Boks Venter.
It's not surprising, mate. He did it with Gerard Steenekamp. In the early tenure of Jake's time at the Bulls tight five struggled massively with Gerard and Morné Smith in the front row. They were written off. Gerard Steenekamp is now pushing Oxen Chair to be the best loosehead in the country when he's fit and healthy and firing. And there's no reason to think that Rassie hasn't found another one of those guys in Boks Venter, who was very good at the Cheetahs before he left and has been very good for Edinburgh and is clearly on Rassie's radar. And it just goes to show that next man up mentality. And Tutuko Mkunu injured, not available, and Boks Venter's on a plane and on his way into the Boks squad. So it's exciting, and that's like we keep saying, this country is blessed with quality front row talent in depth.
But you asked me also about the squad. 45 is trimmed it to for these first 4 matches.
Yeah.
And you look at who's injured. And then you also look at who hasn't been picked. Some of those overseas-based players. And you think there are 70-odd players that he could pick at any given time and play in a test match, where at one stage we were lucky to have had 30.
Yep. You
also look at the way he's never dismissed the overseas contingent. He's lowered it. Players are coming back. So you've got a Kobus Reiner and Andre Pollard, veteran halfback pairing. They'll be playing for the Stormers and the Bulls next season. But he's saying to a guy who's playing for Edinburgh, I'm still going to pick you if you're good enough. Marnus, I'm still going to pick you, even if you're playing in Wales.
Spot on.
But the majority of the players now are domestically based. So he's also saying to the guys in the URC, that's a good enough competition for me. You play well there, I'm going to pick you. So I really enjoy the way he's gone about his selections. Obviously, I'm a big Evan Roos fan, so I'm very happy that he's there. Obviously, naturally disappointed that Cam Hanekom got injured.
Yep.
But as someone says, why do you guys keep on referring to him as 21? He's 23. He'll always be 21 for us. The Norman Whiteside of rugby. For those who don't know, Norman Whiteside played for Ireland when he was 17. And when he was about 33, people would say the young Norman Whiteside. So I like what he's done there. What I'm going to be interested to see is how he balances game time. So when you go back to 2018, when Rassie took over with Jacques, one of his big things was transformation. We got to transform. This country has to speak to the people who live in this country.
Yep. Meaning
it has to speak to the majority. The majority of people in South Africa are black. Where's the black player in this team? Where's the colored player? It had to show that. And for him, transformation meant opportunity, not a numbers game. And he also said that you only get the people into the stadium if they have heroes they can relate to. Inspiring stories from your own suburb kind of thing. The history of you never forget where you come from. And that's why that opening test at home against England will always be one of the most dramatic. Eddie Jones' England team were on fire, 18 from zip at that stage. They dropped one game before they got here. We were 24-3 down after about 10 minutes. Siya Kolisi in his first match as captain. We won that dramatic game. But it was the arrival of Rassie Erasmus and Jacques Minnaar as Springboks, and a new Springbok team. A Springbok team for me that finally spoke to the concept of a rainbow nation. And I was watching an interview that with Sean Fitzpatrick, the former All Blacks captain, head of the Laureus Sports Awards. And he says he's enthralled by what South Africa have achieved in 30 years. He said, I was here in 92 at Ellis Park, mate. It was all white. The stem was plain. Blacks apparently couldn't play rugby. He said, look where they are 30 years later. They're the world champions with the most integrated team. No one blinks about color in terms of the team. They just think best, greatest players. And the most successful period in our history. So when I look at that, I'm like, it's an amazing time to be talking about, writing, reporting on the Springboks. But it's the game time that these next tier are going to get. And going back to what I said in 2018, I don't care how many black players have played for South Africa. I want to know how many minutes they've played. And that's what he hauled out. 11 minutes in 2 seasons, 28 minutes in a season. That's what they got to change. So for me, it's how many minutes does it give Sasha? in the context of having Andre Pollard there? How many minutes does Ethan Hooker get?
Yeah.
How many minutes does Jan-Hendrik Wessels get? And I was very chuffed to see him give Jake the credit for Jan-Hendrik Wessels, saying he's given us options. He's given us options with Ruan Nokia. I would just like it if it was reciprocal.
Yeah, that would be nice.
You know, that he acknowledged what the what the URC coaches are doing, where they're playing players for that versatility, because the game is now not just about you can play one position. So there's got to be those swing votes in many, and we do have that. I mean, I'm with Riss being in there, then I'm thrilled with this with the setup, and no surprises for me who he's chopped.
Yeah, okay. Really. I was surprised that Johan Grobbelaar didn't make the squad. Take nothing away from Marnus van der Merwe. I think he's had a great season, and obviously Malcolm and Bongi are world-class. Jan-Hendrik Wessels as value as a guy who can play loosehead or hooker, but I thought Corby's had one of his better seasons. I'm disappointed for Jaden that he's had the season he's had, but you can't kind of knock Rassie for not including him in the squad. Hopefully Jaden gets it back together and gets back in there. I think we have some questions to answer at scrum off. Morne van den Berg, Grant Williams, two exciting prospects that can hopefully take the opportunities this year, but I'd like to see Jaden back in the mix at some point. Other than that, across the board, you pick 45 guys in South Africa, you're going to have quality, and we do have that. We've got depth across the board, but there is quite a big space between the grizzled veterans who are in their 30s, mid-30s, and the youngsters coming through in their early 20s. And it's going to be interesting to see how he gives those youngsters the experience they need without letting any of those old guys get cold. So we're in for a great season.
But you are concerned about the age.
I'm very concerned about the age, yeah. I would say I think we've got a lot of guys who are, Kobus Reinach's 35, Vincent Cox 35, Siya Kolisi's just turned 34. It's not so much that they can't perform at that age, but it's the durability and the recovery time. When you're 22 and you get injured, you're back in 2 minutes. When you're 32 and you get injured, it could be the end of your career. And so it's quite tricky to plan around a squad that's getting older, because those sort of landmines can happen at any point. So you do need the experience, and it's not about, your age, the number of your age is too high, so we can't include you. It's just about planning around the probability and likelihood of injuries as the guys get older, especially amongst the speed guys, right? If you're a physical tight forward and you're in your mid to late 30s, it's less relevant because it's about your brain and it's about your hunger to put your head into dark places. But when you're a speed guy and you're an athlete, once you start getting into your 30s and maybe that reaction time isn't what it used to be and your acceleration isn't what it used to be, it changes how you play the game. And then your USP starts to fade a bit. So, I'm keen to see how we turn this thing into a third World Cup.
But if you look at the squad and what he has done, which other coaches haven't always done, not just in South Africa, but generally, he hasn't brought down the axe on age.
Spot on.
He is phased without axing, and not phased permanently. He's allowed a player to go away, but he hasn't hesitated to pick him again, even if he's 35.
Spot on.
Deon Fourie being a classic example.
Yep.
Out of the mix, why would you take this guy to the next World Cup? Playing so well, he said he's back in the mix. Age is just a number. Maybe the 40 is the next 30. Unfortunately, Deon got injured again. But what he showed is, I'll pick a 38-year-old if I think he's still good enough to help me win a test. I don't have to pick the 18-year-old.
Spot on.
I don't have to pick what I believe to be an inferior player at this stage just because he's younger
Because of the number.
and he's building for the future. And what's been very comforting for me listening to Rassie is building for the future is never at the expense of the now. And so he's not saying we're going to drop test matches because we're going to win the World Cup.
Yeah.
He's saying we can't afford to drop too many test matches and we can still win the World Cup. We can transform and win. We can do it. But there's a certain filter that's applied to that, and there's certain principles that go to it. His thing also is, you don't always pick the best player, you got to pick the right player. But then sometimes you got to also understand the best player.
Spot on.
So getting that mix right. So when I look at the injuries to a guy like Earben, and I think we're so blessed, you're not going to replace an Earben, 132 tests.
Spot on, yeah.
Bok,
Yeah.
legend. But Lewitt's comeback has been timed so perfectly. He's been out of the game basically for international game for 2-3 years. He's been playing well in Japan, under the radar. Incredibly important to the Boks setup in terms of line-out calling, the presence that he brings, the mongrel that he brings. So he's there. Ruan Nokia has developed as a lock flank. Perfect foil or successor for Sos. Again, Sos, under the radar, always playing for the Honda Heat and has to play to make sure they stay up. So I'm loving where he's looking in certain positions. The one position that I'd say he doesn't have an answer for, clear-cut given injuries, is who succeeds Peter Steph du Toit. You don't emphatically say that's the, like if Bongi's not there, it's Marks. You know, if Ox isn't there, then it's Gerard Steenekamp. You don't look at that 7 flanker and go, is it Jean-Luc Deprez? When he comes back, is it BJ Dixon? Do you play a Ruan Nokia there or a Franco Master with different attributes to a Peter Steph du Toit?
I think that's the key. You're not going to be able to replace Peter Steph du Toit, right? He's the world's best player. I don't think you're going to be able to put somebody in there who does what Peter Steph does, but you do need to find somebody who's Bok caliber impact at 7. And you've mentioned some guys there who are great options. Ruan Venter's another youngster coming through. Kubus Visa's just been drafted into the squad there, ready to earn his first cap. But yeah, I don't know if you can always find a guy who does what that guy does. You just have to find somebody who does add value to that pack.
But if you look at, you mentioned Kubus Visa, and again, just taking from the media conferences that Rassie's done in the last few days, he's been very vocal about that guy. The attributes that he's brought to the setup, to the Bulls, obviously sees him very much as a forelock who can potentially play another role if needs be. But he also spoke about the value of a guy going overseas, playing in the mud and slush for 2 years, being in an unglamorous environment.
Spot on.
And maturing before they pick him. Like he said, he doesn't think there's been anyone under 25 that they've picked for the Boks that's been based overseas. And when they have picked those guys, they tend to have come back and wanting to play in South Africa, in one of the 4 franchises here. So having Jacques also in Ireland, having Jan van Graan in England, having Frans Ludeker in the Japanese leagues, the only place he doesn't have anyone is Super Rugby Pacific. And I wouldn't put it past him when you see a South African pop up there. But he's got Tony Brown in his mix. He's got all his mates over there as well. So it's working. The systems are working.
Yep.
The comfort he needs to be given, as I said, he's taken. He is the modern day Craven then. He's got the doctorate already. He's got the sword. Why change anything? You know, why the question who's going to succeed, Rassie? No one.
I think the fact that
not at this stage.
No, I think the fact that people have to ask that question shows that there isn't a candidate who's really impressed him enough. Nobody's saying, look, yeah, we've got this guy who should replace Rassie. They're saying, who's going to replace him? And I think that's your answer, isn't it? I mean,
but also if you take in Cape Town, Dobber's committed to the Stormers. His big thing is to win the Investec Champions Cup with the Stormers, win another URC title. He wants a 5-year plan with the Stormers. This is where his priority is. He's not thinking Springbok coach. Frans Ludeker is not thinking Springbok coach. He wants to win things in Japan. Jan van Graan at this stage has said he's not thinking Springbok coach. He wants to win the biggest title in Europe with Bath. His job is not complete there. Jacques Nienaber at this stage said, I've been there and done it. I have bigger growth that has to happen for me overseas at the moment, testing myself in other environments. So while you've got all this going on, you've got the guy who's come in, he's transformed the Bok coaching role on every level, and he's had incredible success. And like we always say, doesn't mean he gets everything right, doesn't mean we agree with everything he says. We all have opinions. We're all going to voice them because we're passionate about the game, passionate about the Springboks winning and succeeding. But never before has our game had such health and balance in terms of understanding selections, understanding what they want to do.
Yeah.
And I think that is the greatest position we've ever been in post any World Cup cycle. Because those first 2 years are normally when it all goes to crap. Not here. We had our best season last season, 11 out of 13, lost 2 games by a point. And that's the consistency he spoke about post 2019. What the great All Black teams had, the Richie McCaws, Dan Carters. Can you win 80% of your games in between World Cup cycles? And that's the winning habit he keeps on emphasizing for this season is, yes, while we develop, we still have to win.
No, spot on, mate. That's 100% right. I mean, 11 of 13 last season. So we come out of World Cup, double World Cup wins and continuing to win and unearthing new talents. And we go into this season, which is huge in terms of some of the fixtures that we have, looking to defend the rugby championship title, massive game at Eden Park, and then a huge grudge match tour of Europe at the end of the season. I think we're going to come out of this season in particular with a lot more answers than questions around what the future is in terms of who's playing where, the pecking order, and which direction the Boks are going. I think we're going to have some real clarity.
And so much to look forward to over the next few months. In the weekend, we've got the top 14 semi-finals. You know how that one's going to go. You know who's going to play in the final.
Bordeaux.
It's going to be Bordeaux against Toulouse,
Yes, it is.
which means there's no one going to New Zealand for that first test.
That's correct.
Basically, 80% of that French squad comes out of those two matches.
Scott's betting, mate.
Yeah, you've got the big one in Christchurch. It's the Crusaders against the Chiefs in Super Rugby's final. And 31 successive playoff wins for the Crusaders in Christchurch since the inception of Super Rugby.
Mate, are you picking a Crusaders win?
Mate, I am.
Really?
Even though they lost 35-19 to the Chiefs in May of this year, the Chiefs are a team that can go down and win. I am picking the Crusaders to win. Although McMillan, the Chiefs coach, has said it's time for that 31 to come to an end.
I think
and they can do it. But I think it's going to be a great game.
Chiefs by 3.
I've got the Crusaders to win it by 6. On our WhatsApp channel, we will give our predictions closer to the time where we actually see the squads. But that's great, Rugger, to look forward to. Ma Nonu at 43 is going to be playing for Toulon in the semi-finals.
Scored a try at the
43, he's played 475 first-class games. I would still pick him in the All Blacks at this stage, given what they've had in the past few years. And then this international season of rugby, which starts on Friday night, Los Pumas in Dublin against the British and Irish Lions.
Beautiful.
Now, here's one for you. This young Pablo Matero-led Puma side upstage a mix-and-match Lions side.
Yes.
Lions go on their 9-match tour of Australia, lose the series. Australia come last in the Rugby Championship. South Africa wins it. What does that say about the British and Irish Lions?
Mate, it's the end. Then we might see that Tour de France, mate.
Tour de France. But unfortunately that the French, because New Zealand lost 3 in a row to France now, they'll probably break that streak. You know, I think the streak's broken, then the next team starts the streak.
Correct.
So an untimely kind of fixture list for the French. They play 3 tests, but it's the 3 tests against the British Irish Lions, and we've got the bumper ones. 6th and 13th of September, Eden Park. Can we break that 50 in a row? Last time they lost 94, I was there on the press box when the French scored the try from the end of the earth. You were there the last time. We should have beaten them. The Bismarck du Plessis tackle on Dan Carter in Auckland.
Yeah, shocker.
So, it's just so much to look forward to. It starts with the Barbarians. First time ever in South Africa at the best venue, DHL Stadium in Cape Town, against Rassie Springboks. Who do you think he's going to pick?
Oh,
how's that team going to look?
Mate, that team is going to look nothing like either of us say. I think it's going to be come down to what the weather is, what the makeup of that Barbarians team is. I think he is pretty open there. I do think we're going to see some of the young guys. Maybe, obviously not the youngest of the young guys, but I think a guy like Ethan Hooker might play in a game like that. And then I think anybody that is not 100% on the medical report is not going to be risked in a game like that. So I think it's pretty variable. I would like to see a strong team put out a strong performance, but I think we may see quite an experimental side just to get some answers about how people react to the big occasion. I'm not going to give you any names, mate. I actually don't know. It could be anybody. Boan Fenter, mate.
You didn't even know who Boan Fenter was.
I know exactly who Boan Fenter is.
Boan Fenter sounds like a type of big snake.
It does, mate.
It's going to suffocate you.
Let it wrap you up.
It's going to suffocate you.
Yeah.
There, I love again. We just talk about him. That guy went over. He's going to go play for Scotland. He qualifies next year. Jean Klein, the minute they left him out of the Irish side, you actually got him back again. That's what I love about what he's saying to every South African out there. If you still haven't been picked for another international side, don't give up hope, because we may make a call and then the decision's going to be yours. Do you want to come back and play for South Africa? And Jean Klein didn't need any reminding, and he has a World Cup gold medal to show for it.
Underrated player, that's.
Yeah, good player that. There's so many good players in the Boks setup, but there's also a hell of a lot of good players in the school setup. And magnificent win for Poljum over the weekend. Not so good for me. Sack 7, Poljum 82. They've done that to a few teams. They beat Cares by 100 as well at Newlands. Marcus Miller, 2 tries. couple of assists. I think he's a try and assist. He's over 60 for the last 2 seasons. Yes, he's playing for Poljam, ranked 1 in the country at the moment. Stormers have signed him. Good young player, but some great schools rugger. Last round this weekend, and then we into the Craven Weeks, which is always a fantastic, fantastic occasion. We've got such good talent at schoolboy level.
Yeah, we do.
Taking him into the under 20s, and then obviously into the regions, SA Cup, and into the national level. It's going to be a great international season. It's Boks by 10 always. Catch you next week.